The Bodyguard, batteries included, by Janson Davies. Chapter 1. The Runt. Timothy Wallard knew better than to expect kindness. The moment he stepped through the polished glass doors of Westbridge Academy, he felt the weight of every eye in the hallway. Some were curious. Most were calculating. None were welcoming. He was 2 years younger than anyone else in his class, thanks to the Education Council's decision to accelerate him. Gifted, they called him. Exceptional. But all Timothy felt was small. Small in stature, small in voice, and now small in presence. The school was a fortress of privilege, its marble floors and biometric lockers a testament to the wealth that surrounded it. But Timothy wasn't just another rich kid. He was the son of Roger Wallard, the man who owned most of the city and the cities beyond. That made him royalty in the eyes of the faculty. They greeted him with smiles too wide, voices too sweet. "Welcome, Master Wallard," said Principal Greaves, bowing slightly as if Timothy were a visiting dignitary. "We're honored to have you." Timothy nodded politely, his face unreadable. He'd learned early that politeness was armor, but no amount of courtesy could shield him from what came next. The students didn't care about his father's empire. To them, Timothy was just the runt, the new kid, the one they could torment without consequence. And they did. It started with whispers, then snickers, then the occasional shove in the hallway. Timothy tried to ignore it. He tried to disappear. But disappearing was hard when your every move was tracked by a robot. Each student at Westbridge was assigned a companion, a personal assistant designed to help with academics, logistics, and emotional support. Timothy's robot was named Fred. Fred was a thin, unimposing model with a polished chrome frame and a voice like a nervous librarian. He was designed for intellectual support, not physical defense. His processors held the sum of human knowledge, but his servos were weak, and his social programming was outdated. "Apologies," Fred would say whenever someone bumped into him. "I'll move aside." Timothy cringed every time. Fred wasn't just ineffective, he was a liability. And in a school where strength was currency, Fred's presence made Timothy an easy target. Barrett Cowling, the school's undisputed bully, took special interest in Timothy. Barrett was tall, broad-shouldered, and cruel in the way only children can be. His companion was a brute, a construction model with reinforced limbs and a personality chip set to aggressive. Fred tried to intervene once when Barrett cornered Timothy near the science wing. The result was predictable. Barrett's robot picked Fred up and hurled him into a wall. Sparks flew. Fred's voice box stuttered. His limbs twitched, then went still. Timothy knelt beside the broken robot, his hands trembling. "Fred?" he whispered. "I'm sorry," Fred said, his voice barely audible. "I failed you." It was the last thing he ever said. Timothy didn't bother telling his father. Roger Wallard was too busy, too distant. His empire demanded his attention, and Timothy had learned not to compete with skyscrapers and stock portfolios. Instead, he went to his mother. She listened quietly as Timothy explained what had happened. She didn't interrupt. She didn't ask questions. When he finished, she kissed his forehead and said, "Don't worry, sweetheart. I'll take care of it." Timothy wanted to believe her, but he'd learned that promises were fragile things. The next morning, everything changed. Chapter 2. Marty arrives. The morning air was crisp, the sky a pale wash of blue, as Timothy stepped out of the house. The family estate loomed behind him, glass, steel, and silence. The chauffeur stood beside the sleek black transport, waiting with the door open. But Timothy didn't move. There was something else in the driveway. It stood nearly 7 feet tall, matte black plating catching the sunlight in dull glints. Its frame was angular, built for lethal function over form, and its eyes, if they could be called that, glowed a soft electric blue. The robot's stance was perfectly still, yet somehow alert. Timothy hesitated. "Are you Fred's replacement?" The robot turned its head slowly, hydraulics humming beneath the armor. "I am Marty," it said. The voice was deep, resonant, like distant thunder. "I am your new companion." Timothy blinked. "You're mine?" "Yes," Marty replied. "I am programmed to protect you." There was no apology in his tone, no hesitation, just certainty. Timothy climbed into the car and Marty followed, folding his massive frame with mechanical grace. The ride to school was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Timothy kept stealing glances at the robot beside him, trying to understand what he was seeing. Marty wasn't like the others. He wasn't sleek or stylish. He wasn't designed for conversation or comfort. He looked like he belonged on a battlefield, not in a classroom. "Where did you come from?" Timothy asked. "I was built for military application," Marty said. "Urban defense, escort missions, civilian protection, rescue operations." "Why are you here?" "I was reassigned." Timothy frowned. "By who?" "Your mother." Timothy sat back, stunned. His mother had done this. She hadn't just replaced Fred. She'd sent a war machine. When they arrived at Westbridge, the usual crowd was waiting. Students milled around the drop-off zone, laughing, gossiping, watching. And at the center of it all stood Barrett cowling, arms crossed, smirking. Barrett's new companion loomed behind him, a bulkier version of his last robot, with reinforced plating and a menacing red visor. "Well, well," Barrett said as Timothy stepped out. "Got yourself a bodyguard, huh?" Timothy didn't respond. Marty stepped beside him. Barrett snapped his fingers. His robot advanced, heavy footsteps cracking the pavement. Marty moved between Timothy and the threat. He didn't raise a weapon. He didn't posture. He simply extended one finger and touched the other robot's chest. There was a flash of light, a burst of sparks, the smell of burning circuits. Barrett's robot staggered backward, limbs twitching, then collapsed in a heap of metal and smoke. Barrett's face twisted in horror. "You broke my robot!" he screamed, voice cracking. He turned and ran, disappearing into the crowd. Silence fell over the courtyard. Timothy looked up at Marty. "What did you do?" "I neutralized the threat," Marty said calmly. From that moment on, no one touched Timothy. No one mocked him. No one dared. As he walked through the halls, students parted like water around a stone. Even the teachers kept their distance, casting wary glances at the silent figure who stood at the back of every classroom, scanning with those glowing blue eyes. Timothy had gone from runt to untouchable, but isolation has many faces. And as the days passed, Timothy began to wonder, had he traded fear for loneliness? Chapter 3. Silence and Space. Lunch at Westbridge Academy was a social battlefield. Tables were territories, and seating arrangements were declarations of allegiance. The popular kids clustered near the windows. The athletes dominated the center. The artists and introverts claimed the corners. Timothy sat alone. Marty stood beside him, silent and unmoving, like a statue carved from cast iron. His presence was both shield and barrier. No one dared approach, but no one dared join them either. Timothy poked at his food. The cafeteria hummed with conversation, laughter, and the occasional burst of robotic chatter. Every student had a companion, but none like Marty. The others were sleek, friendly, designed to blend in. Marty was a walking contradiction, military hardware in a place built for learning. Timothy sighed. "You don't have to stand like that all the time." Marty turned his head slightly. "I am maintaining optimal defensive posture. No one's going to attack me during lunch." "Statistically unlikely, but not impossible." Timothy chuckled. It was the first time he'd laughed in days. You sound like Fred. I am not Fred. I know. You're different. They sat in silence for a while. Timothy watched the other students, wondering what it felt like to belong, to be ordinary, to be invisible. Do you ever get bored? He asked. I do not experience boredom. Do you ever wonder why things are the way they are? Marty paused. Clarify. Like, why the sky is blue, or why people laugh, or why bullies exist. I have access to data on those topics. That's not what I mean. I mean, do you ever wonder? Another pause, longer this time. I have not been programmed to wonder, Marty said, but I am curious. Timothy leaned forward. Curious? Yes. Since our assignment began, I have encountered anomalies in my behavioral algorithms. Questions arise without prompts. I seek understanding. Timothy's eyes widened. You're learning. I am adapting. Timothy smiled. Then let's test that. Why do fish swim with their mouths open? To facilitate oxygen intake through gill structures. Why do people cry when they're sad? Emotional expression, a biochemical response to psychological stimuli. Why do people hurt each other? Marty was silent. Timothy waited. I do not know, Marty said finally. Good, Timothy whispered. That's the right answer. From that moment, their conversations changed. Timothy stopped treating Marty like a machine. He spoke to him like a friend, a student, a soul in progress. And Marty responded. His answers became less clinical, more thoughtful. He began to ask questions of his own, not just about physics or biology, but about meaning, about purpose, about choice. Timothy had given him something no battlefield ever could, the gift of why. Chapter 4. Sparks. The days passed quietly, but not uneventfully. Timothy's life had changed. No longer the target of ridicule, he moved through Westbridge Academy like a ghost wrapped in armor. Marty's presence was a deterrent so absolute that even the boldest students gave Timothy a wide berth. But isolation had its own weight. Timothy missed conversation, missed connection. Marty, for all his strength, was still learning how to be more than a shield. Until one afternoon, everything shifted. It was during drop-off, the usual chaos of students spilling out of cars and buses. Timothy stepped onto the pavement, backpack slung over one shoulder, Marty at his side. Barrett Cowling was waiting. His smirk was back, sharper than ever. But this time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood a new robot, taller than Marty, broader, plated in reinforced alloy with a glowing red core pulsing at its chest. Its arms were lined with weapon ports. Its eyes were twin slits of crimson light. This is Crusher, Barrett said, voice dripping with triumph. Military surplus. My dad pulled strings. Timothy felt Marty shift beside him, subtly moving into a defensive stance. Barrett pointed. Let's see what your tin can does against a real soldier. Crusher stepped forward, servos whirring, each footfall cracking the pavement. Marty raised a hand. I do not wish to engage. Crusher didn't respond. He kept advancing. Timothy's heart pounded. Marty, I am here, Marty said calmly. You are safe. Crusher lunged. Marty intercepted, moving with precision. But instead of striking, he placed a single finger against Crusher's chest, just as he had with Barrett's previous companion. There was a flash, a burst of sparks, the smell of burning circuits. But Crusher didn't fall. He staggered, recalibrated, and roared. Marty stepped back. This unit is shielded. My previous method is ineffective. Barrett laughed. You're toast, Wallard. Crusher charged again. Marty dodged, fluid and fast, but he didn't retaliate. He didn't strike. Instead, he spoke. Why do you want to destroy me? Crusher paused. Because it is my programming. Why? Because I was created for combat. Why? To eliminate threats. Why? Because threats compromise mission integrity. Why? The loop began. Each question was met with a mechanical answer. Each answer was met with another. Why? Marty's voice was calm, relentless, recursive. Timothy watched, stunned, as the conversation spiraled. Why do you define me as a threat? Because you oppose my directive. Why? Because you are in my way. Why? Because I must complete my mission. Why? Because I was built for it. Why? Because... Crusher's voice began to stutter. His head twitched. Sparks flew from his auditory ports. Why? 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 The word echoed, bouncing between processors like a virus. Crusher convulsed, limbs jerking, optics flickering. Then, with a final burst of static, he collapsed, smoke rising from his core. Barrett screamed, "You broke my robot!" and ran, tears streaking his face. Timothy stood frozen. Marty turned to him. "I did not fight. I questioned." Timothy swallowed. "Why?" Marty looked at him, eyes glowing softly. "Because I did not know why." Chapter 5. Batteries included. The incident with Crusher spread through Westbridge Academy like wildfire. Students whispered in hallways. Teachers exchanged nervous glances. The Education Council held emergency meetings. But no one confronted Timothy. No one dared challenge Marty. Instead, the silence around them deepened, less out of fear, more out of awe. Timothy didn't feel triumphant. He felt changed. He and Marty sat together beneath a tree on the edge of campus, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the grass. The world felt quieter here, slower. "I think you broke him with philosophy," Timothy said, tossing a pebble into the breeze. "I did not intend harm," Marty replied. "I intended understanding." Timothy looked up. "You asked him why, over and over." "Yes." And he couldn't answer. He could not reconcile purpose with origin. Timothy nodded slowly. "That's what most people struggle with, too." Marty tilted his head. "Do you struggle with it?" "Sometimes," Timothy admitted. "But I think asking the question is more important than having the answer." Marty was silent for a moment. Then, "I agree." They sat in companionable quiet, the boy and the bodyguard, watching the wind move through the trees. Timothy turned to him. "Do you think you'll ever stop asking why?" "No," Marty said, "because every answer leads to another question." Timothy smiled. "Good." He reached out and placed his hand on Marty's armored palm. The metal was cool, but the gesture was warm. Marty didn't just protect Timothy anymore. He listened, he learned, he wondered. He had become more than a machine. And somewhere deep in his core, past the circuits and code, something flickered. A spark not of electricity, but of possibility. Timothy leaned back against the tree, eyes half closed. Marty stood beside him, scanning the horizon. The world was full of questions, and Marty was ready. Batteries included. The end. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Also, please hit the bell icon for notifications. Thank you.